So as you start to feed the skin with it and it's helping the absorption, now your vitamins and vitamins and minerals are being absorbed in another way. Your body can start to regenerate in another way. So I use body, mind, and soul and quantum. I use frequency and photons and whatnot to bring about different health results. But it's really giving your body everything that it needs to come back and go, oh my gosh, I can be a different being. I don't have to present in the same old way.
San Diego 911 emergency. You need to come right away. There's a man with a gun and it's loaded. Receiving emergency signal from 4 George 1141. We've got a white female down. We need paramedics close, please. All available units roll code that way.
Welcome to the De-Escalation Conversations Podcast. With me today is, oh my gosh, just an amazing lady, Jo Hawkins. She is a medical neuroscience practitioner. And you might be asking, Kerr, what's a medical neuroscience practitioner? Well, you're going to learn about that today. She does restorative healthcare therapy. And you might be asking, Kerr, what's restorative healthcare therapy? You're going to learn about that today. Basically, what we're doing today, it's back to the future. We're reversing the effects of aging, of diabetes, of disease in a way that allows the body to heal itself. And I was introduced to Jo, who is coming to us from right next door, South Africa. And I was introduced by a man. Hold your seats on, or hold your shoes or coats, hats, whatever for this. I've never met this guy. Well, in person. We've known each other on Zoom for years. He lives in Australia. And I've had him on the podcast before. Gagan Gupta, an amazing individual. And he was talking to me one day and he said, Kerry, you got to meet Jo Hawkins. I'm like, okay, sounds great. And then it took, I don't know, Jo, what, a month, 2 months, 6 months, something like that. It was a while. It wasn't just like Goggins said it and it manifested in 3.5 minutes. Bottom line, Jo is with us today because of Goggins. So Goggins, if you're listening to this, thank you. And Jo was so amazing when I met her. Not that long ago. Was it last week, I think? And during our conversation, I was rude and inconsiderate and I interrupted her. And I said, Jo, I got to tell you, I need you on the podcast because people have to hear what you do and the message that you have and the hope that you bring. So, Jo, welcome to the De-Escalation Conversations Podcast.
Thank you so much, Kerr. This is so fabulous to be here.
Well, and folks, I love the accent. And she's beautiful inside and out. I could listen to Jo. Like, Jo, I want you to do 17 audiobooks so I can just play them again and again and again and just listen to you because the things that you have, the knowledge that you have, and I want to make sure I'm gonna say this right up front. In the time that we have today, beyond anything, we have to discuss the research that you've done on Amy. The amygdala. Everybody knows that listens to me for more than about 3.5 seconds knows that I call the amygdala Amy for short, because that's just a whole lot easier to say. And you just blew my mind with some of the research that you've done. And it blew my mind because it gave me some answers. And at the same time, it made me a little confused. And I love that because I had to figure out the different aspects. So I want to dive into that topic more. And it has to deal with suicide, suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation. So I just want to throw that out there just to kind of plant that seed in our listeners' minds and also in yours and quite frankly mine, because now I'll remember it for sure. Tell us, what is a medical neuroscience practitioner?
So I am a registered nurse, midwife, psychiatric nurse, and community health nurse by profession. And then in my private practice, I conduct everything using neuroscience, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and studying the subconscious, really going into how to get the maximum out of human potential.
That's a lot of nursing going on there.
Well,
How
yeah.
did you get into this field of taking care of other people?
As a little baby, I was on death's door for a number of months. And I think, when you've had that experience, life is not the same. You can't see things the same as other people see things. You've got this eternal perspective. And human life becomes incredibly precious, incredibly treasured, and you want to nurture it. You want to watch it bloom to full potential. I specifically remember hearing the doctor say that my life was not worth saving. And I was about 8 months old. So, they thought it was impossible. They weren't being rude. They were just like, she's not gonna make it. So, it formed me. And then my mother she was just amazing. She was an incredible nurse. We lived out in the middle of the bush and in the Zimbabwean war. And she believed in the power of the subconscious, and she used to train me to use my brain differently. And I didn't have the energy to play, or I didn't have the inclination to play, because it just perhaps seemed very childish when you've, seen life and death in the face. And so she used to train me in, she'd dissect ox hearts or kidneys or livers or lungs, and train me in using my brain differently. And so she always used to walk in and say things to me like, "You have a brilliant brain, and if you want to, you could." And then she'd tell me what I could do. Um, and in a dental chair, she told me that I could, if I wished, not have a local anesthetic for the big drilling and filling, but learn how to not receive pain. She wasn't talking about how to be brave or how to be stoic. She was talking about not receive pain. And so I thought that was kind of cool. So she used to teach me to do all these different things. And as a consequence, I used to get very different results in life, because she always told me there was always a way. And it doesn't matter what happens, there's always another way. And it was very magical, because it was like opening up the wardrobe in the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It was like there's always another answer, and you get to choose, and you don't have to accept anyone's final answer. In junior school, I was told that I'd wear reading glasses or glasses all my life, all the time, right? And within a year, my eyes had healed. So we have quantum potential, and it's learning to access those parts of our DNA that are dormant and ignite them, ignite the potential, rather than the prognosis that we've been given.
Folks, if you're listening to this in your car, there's a little kind of like a half circle swoopy thing to the left of those two parallel bars that are the pause button. It takes you back, I don't know, 10, 15, 30 seconds. Go ahead and just hit that about 17 times just to listen what Jo said and pick up on the subtle things. You had me at the Zimbabwe bush. So you're not in some major metropolitan area where
No.
there's tons of high-end medical care. Your mom is taking care of you in a very rural, very third world type area, yeah?
Well, that's where we lived. And so she ran the local clinic and was, she trained the whole community in advanced first aid and all that sort of thing. But I was at a doctor in Harare, so that was Salisbury at the time. So I was in a medical center, and they were going to give me a local anesthetic injection. But my mother said to me if I wanted to, because the dentist left to go and prepare the syringe, and she said, if you want to, I can teach you how to not receive pain, and then you don't have to have an injection and a fat lip and drool later on. So I said, that sounds cool. So yeah, so all my life I never had any dental injections and I had a lot of dental work and moved a lot. So the different dentists would say, no, 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 we really have to. This is going to be deep. And I'd say, okay, I tell you what, I'll make a deal. The minute I flinch, you may inject me. And they'd sort of like laugh, and then they'd drill away, and then they'd watch me, and they'd drill a little deeper and a little deeper, and I wouldn't flinch. And yeah, so it really, really works when you learn how to use your brain. You produce your own neurochemistry, and you gain a level of mastery in the body, which is really rather exciting.
Yeah, it is. And I'm just thinking beyond the benefits of not having medications, because nearly even I know with this, I mean, I've had a fair amount of medical training and experience as a firefighter, EMT, ER tech, et cetera, but medicines have side effects. And so if we're able to avoid the medicines, we avoid the side effects. And beyond having a fat lip and drooling, which I drool even without medication, but that's beside the point. What I'm getting at is the ability to do that, number one. And I'm thinking that I'm jumping ahead to a law enforcement officer in a fight with a suspect and the potential to not receive pain so that they're not in as much danger. Is that something that could happen?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And even, our body's able to make very, very quickly, a little bit like the work you do, we're able to make our own anesthetics, so our own painkillers, which are better than morphine or pethidine or any of those. We're able to make it in a couple of minutes, and no injection's going to be that quick. It just isn't. So we can do far superior things to any of the chemistry that they're wanting to give us because our own neurochemistry is just the best.
Wow. So once again, you knocked my socks off, and I love it. One thing I'd also like to take half a step back to is the way that your mother presented it to you. Such a magical way that most parents don't do. If you want to, you could. You get to choose. I wrote down your words because that's exactly where I want to be as a parent, as a grandparent, in any relationship. Because the ability to have the autonomy is powerful for a human being. It doesn't matter whether you're 2 or 20 or 30, 50, doesn't matter what age you are. And it's one of the things that we talk about with de-escalation is the ability to allow someone to make a choice and not have it falsely limited. Well, you can do this or you can do this. With a 2-year-old, would you like to wear the shoes with hearts or the shoes with sparkles? And they're going to choose one of those two. An adult doesn't like to be limited to 2 choices. In fact, I always say that if you have 2 choices, you have a dilemma. If you have 3 choices, now you begin to have options. But the opportunity your mother gave you to make your own choice allows your mind to open up. And therefore, whether you decide to do it or not do it, that responsibility is on you. And you're also now not going to blame her because you were given the choice. What a wonderful way to establish autonomy, to establish so many different things. What was your relationship with your mom like? I mean, I can guess just from how you've talked about her so far, but as you grew older, as you got into those teen years where typically there's some conflict that happens between teenagers and their parents, and as a young lady and then, becoming as you grew into your womanhood, what was your relationship like with your mom through those different periods?
So, my parents were like my best friends. And maybe because I had been near death, I didn't have an average childhood. I was already, my mama used to say, you're like an old soul. You just, you've been an adult all your life. Um, so, and maybe that means I was really boring, but I was more in my head than, you know. But so my parents were my best friends. I remember in high school, staying up so late, talking to them till about 2 in the morning because we'd talk about theology and philosophy, and we'd talk quantum and neuroscience, and it would just be so exciting that none of us would go to bed. My mum and my dad and myself, and I remember going to school and being exhausted, and people were saying, "Yo, what were you doing last night?" I said, "God, my parents keeping me up." But they
Yeah,
were really, really very special.
the other kids are out getting drunk and you're at home talking to your parents. That's awesome. That's awesome. What do you think? Because we have a lot of school teachers and first responders, and obviously a lot of them have families or they're dealing with kids. What do you think it is that your parents did besides what, I pointed out with your mom giving you choices, giving you autonomy, even as a young child? What do you think some of the key things were that your parents did that made that relationship with you so rich?
That's a great question. I think my mom, they believed in me. They believed that I could create amazing things and think differently. And so they opened up my brain to quantum potential, right? Not just possibilities, but like, okay, if you want to, you could do this or you could do that, or and this whole thing, like, you have a brilliant brain, and if you want to. So they just sort of like open the chink of this wondrous world where we're not limited, where it's not what we're told. I remember at 17 I just started my nursing career, and we finished school early in South Africa. Well, I was from Zimbabwe. We started school early as well. And so I'd started nursing and had been involved in a car accident and got whiplash, which was undiagnosed, and fractured my right hand. And they had to do pin and plate and put cast on and everything. And then they had to take it off early because I was going through a lot of pain and my fingers were purple. And I was getting gangrene. And they said they were going to have to amputate. They said, first of all, it would be at my wrist and then at my elbow. And then it wouldn't be long before it would be at my shoulder because my sympathetic nerve was pinched. And so the blood supply was not getting to my limb. And I had, medical professionals, we have the best surgeons in the land. We really are given the creme de la creme. They make sure that we looked after. And I had an exceptional doctor, and I wasn't afraid because I knew that wasn't going to be the outcome that I would choose. He didn't give me an option. But when you're brought up with a mother like mine, she just says, there's always a way. There's always a way. And so I just believed. And it wasn't long. We've got the reticular activating system in our brain. And I didn't understand that then, but I do now. And this, once you've programmed it for what to look for, it finds the answers for you and brings them into your field. So it wasn't long before we had found the way to ease my hand, and then another way to ease that, and eventually, it's no problem. But if I had lost it, I wouldn't have been able to do any of the work that I do. I wouldn't have been able to carry on my training.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the RAS just a little bit because it is such a powerful thing. And I love how you gave an example of how it can work. In the teaching that we do here at IDEA, we talk about the RAS. And because the RAS can lead to really good things and really bad things. It can lead to confirmation bias. It can lead to stereotyping. It can lead to reinforcing unconscious biases. And it also can be super powerful in exactly the way that you talked about. And the way I explain the RAS is like this. The helicopter, the police helicopter unit in San Diego is called ABLE, ABLE, Airborne Law Enforcement. And I flew in ABLE as a tactical flight officer for about a year and a half. And I remember one morning we were up for an early morning hop, and there was a Home Depot, so a home improvement store. And a white stake bed truck. So flatbed truck with a cab, and it's got it's white, and then it's got sides on that are slats, and they use it for construction work. So a white stake bed truck had just been stolen. The driver had pulled up. He was going to load some things in, some things that he had just bought, and he left it running with the keys in the ignition. Suspect jumps in, takes off with the truck. Well, the call comes in, and we are literally less than 30 seconds away because I'm up on the gyro stabilized binoculars, and I'm looking at it as the pilot's coming in, and I'm thinking, oh, we got this. How many white stake bed trucks are there? You never see them. So I'm thinking this can be easy to spot. Oh, there's one. Oh, there's one. There's another. I found a parking lot. I'm not kidding you. I found a parking lot not far from the Home Depot with over 30 white stake bed trucks stored there. I'd never seen that parking lot before because our mind is so good at filtering out the unimportant stuff until we have to find a white stake bed truck. And then we see how many there really are of them when we've never noticed them at all. I heard another police officer referred to as the white Honda theory. You're looking for a stolen car, it's a white Honda. You know how many white Hondas that there are running around in America? So the RAS, this filtering system, what are some of the ways that you use that to achieve your goals in the therapy that you do?
Yeah, what an incredible system and body and brain, and we are magnificently made. And I think because of my mum's training, I just believe there's always a way. So I always just keep looking for the way, and I want to find it the quickest, the shortest. And I'm one of those ridiculous overachievers. So the results my patients get, they've always got to be pretty fast. And with the least amount of effort, and everything I do has got to be the gentlest and the best and the most in line with everything that makes us human. You know, it's got to be dignified. It's got to be. So because I have those sorts of filters, I'm able to come up with all sorts of things. So, for example, I noticed that so many of my patients are not absorbing these days because our guts are, you know, one antibiotic and your gut will be leaky for 2 years. So, I was struggling to get the nutritional results in my patients. You know, supplements really weren't doing it. And then I realized that when I was growing roses in Swaziland, I used to, you know, you'd dig a massive hole and put all the good stuff in the hole, but then I'd also prepare what's called a foliar feed, and you'd feed the rose via the leaves and get incredible results. So I realized for my patients, I needed to develop a foliar feed. So I made them a special multivitamin with vitamin D3 and K and the B's and A and E and CoQ10 and quercetin and all the rest of it that you will absorb through your skin. And I got much better results from my patients when I started to find what other possibilities are there to get this nutrition in and absorbed correctly.
And for those of you that are listening to this or watching this, I happen to be bilingual in Hawkins. So vitamin
Vitamin.
in America. I just wanted to offer some interpretation services there. I'm teasing you.
You're going to need to do that often. We speak different languages sometimes.
That's okay. We'll go to our car and I'll open up the boot, and you open up the boot, I'll open up the trunk. So So the concept of supplements being absorbed in different ways, and your rose analogy is great, where we always think about the flowers and the plants absorbing things through the roots. But the fact that you were, and I'm sure there's somebody, I 100% guarantee you, somebody's going to email either you or me and go, hey, what was that mixture that you sprayed on the roses? I want to know about that. But the idea of, okay, the flowers are absorbing through their petals and their leaves. It's not just the roots. And
Yes, so the roots are amazing, but our roots are often, they take a lot, to tell you the truth. But the leaves can absorb so much better. They really do. They absorb incredibly well. And so I realized when you look into the microvilli in the gut, they've got these little finger-like root projections, and those are our roots. And so I also discovered that, when you when you're growing roses, Kerr, you've got um, every single leaf represents one root. And what I found with people, when they have gluten intolerance and things like that, when their roots are being killed off through gluten or through glyphosate, we get white patches on our skin. And I used to think that was just, my mother used to say, oh, it must be close to an albino. But no, I was losing the ability to absorb from my gut. And your skin is a map to your gut. So as you start to feed the skin with it and it's helping the absorption, now your vitamins and vitamins and minerals are being absorbed in another way. Your body can start to regenerate in another way. So I use body, mind, and soul and quantum. I use frequency and photons and whatnot to bring about different health results. But it's really giving your body everything that it needs to come back and go, oh my gosh, I can be a different being. I don't have to present in the same old way.
so two thoughts on that. One is that concept of I can be a different person. I don't have to present in the same old way is an idea ultimately where we go with our de-escalation training. I don't have to be the cynical school teacher that I've been for the last 5 years. I can shift that. I don't have to be the unhealthy medic or police officer who's eating burritos on the trunk of their police car at 3 a.m, because I can make different choices. And I don't have to be the firefighter in the firehouse who's having conflict with the other people that I'm spending 24 hours with, and then going home and having more conflict with my family. And we talk about those shifts, and what's wonderful is it sounds to me that the shifts that you're teaching your patients to make will also have a positive effect on their relationships and their overall happiness in life and how they show up in this world as a human being. Am I on the right track with that?
Absolutely, because we won 100%. That's fabulous. So the more we can be in truth, true alignment with our authentic ideal self, the more we let go of dis-ease and disorder and disharmony, the more we are brought back to resonating with our true self, which really is full of life and vitality. I call it, embodying heaven on earth in the flesh, calling it to earth. So we've got quantum potential, which is the wave-like function. And then we've got particle, which is our bodies. And we're bringing the thought wave of enormous, magnificent potential into our flesh. And then we're grounded. We've got that quantum potential, and now it's grounded. So a little bit like a lightning strike. Until it hits the earth, there's no power in that. Electricity, all of these things, they've got to be grounded, otherwise they're dangerous. Or they're not doing anything either way, right? So once we can harness that energy and actualize it or realize it, then we've got something that we can really do with it. So our self-expression ends up with our genetic expression. So how we are being will show up either in dis-ease or in rejuvenation.
Can you expand on, because I loved how when we talked the other day, how you explained it, this concept of dis-ease, which we normally hear it all run together with no slight pause in between the dis and the ease, but we always call it disease.
Yes.
But you emphasize the two parts of the word. Could you kind of explain that again to me? Because I'd love to hear it again.
So I hope I'm sort of like bringing back what I said to you then, but I'll just have a go at it from today. So we live in a universe, which means one verse, one song, it's one harmony, one symphony. And we're all playing our own unique note in that, our own unique part. And when we are, if you look at the medical profession at the moment, how it's expressing at the moment is it divides the whole person up, right? You've got a mind which must go to that department, and you've got a thyroid which must go to that department, and you've got an ear, nose, and throat which must go over there, and you've got an eye that must go there. And so nobody's looking at the whole person. And when I see the different medicines they're on and all the rest of it, it blows my brain because I looked at my father, for example, and he had been in multiple organ failure for decades. And when I went through all of his data and looked at everything, I was saying, gosh, Dad, you've been in kidney failure for about 20 years and heart failure and your eyes are failing and, you've got CCF and I'm looking at this and I'm going like the actual organ doesn't look too bad. So what does look bad is the vascular system holding it all together. His primary diagnosis wasn't a whole lot of organ failures. It shouldn't have been. It should have been his primary diagnosis was vascular failure. Secondary failure was the heart failure, the kidney failure, the lung failure, the eye failure. But if your vascular system is failing, but nobody was looking at that, right? Everybody was treating something isolated. So he didn't stand a chance in that way. So once you've understood that we are a whole, the minute you divide a person up like that, to divide something up is called to fracture, right? To break, or diabolical. It means dismembered or disjointed. We can't bring someone back into harmony in a system that divides them up. We've got to come back as a whole, as a real human being. And so that's where the dis-ease comes in, because when we're all divided up and everything is not at ease, we're not in harmony, we're not harmonious, then we will be more diseased. We will present with a lot of dis-ease. So when your mind goes out, your body goes out. When your body goes out, your mind goes out. They're so linked. We have no idea where the traumas are being stored in our flesh. They're encoded. And some of getting rid of disease is helping people find out which traumas are trapped and where are they. Sometimes it's from generations past in our DNA, and sometimes it's from being part of a collective in this time, where our greatest disease is autoimmune, which means that we are actually self-destructing, or we're at war with our own flesh and other flesh. And it's the truth. The whole of humanity is fighting each other.
In so many different ways. Wow.
And we often fighting ourselves, we have a lot of unforgiveness, mostly to ourselves. We can forgive others more easily, but we're quite hard on ourselves. And then I see it showing up in different organs, and it's very interesting to sort of read somebody's life story through their tissues.
Yeah, I would imagine that ability. There was a movie that came out in the early 2000s. It was a remake, and it starred Eddie Murphy, and it was called Dr. Dolittle. They did a couple. I think there was 2 or 3. They made sequels, but the idea that he could talk to animals and understand and know things that the average person couldn't, and you're like the Dr. Dolittle, but reading the body and seeing things that other people that to you are readily apparent, and other people just don't see the white stake bed trucks that you do. Question I have. I had heard when you were talking about like a white patch on the skin, I'd heard that the skin was a direct reflection of what is going on with the liver. And if the liver is either overtaxed or not working properly for some reason or another, then that tends to present with skin conditions. Is that accurate? Is that too generic, too general?
No, that's a
Only in some
part of it.
cases?
No, that's a part of it, also with the eyes. But you will see darker patches on the skin if it's liver sort of dysfunction. But I believe it's because it's damaging the gut. Um, it's a working hypothesis, but that's what I'm finding is that our skin seems to be a map to our gut. And if you think about that and where that could go, we might not need to do such hectic things like colonoscopies in the future. We might just be able to read somebody's skin and be able to treat. So it's very fascinating looking at it. So the white would be the villi actually dying, and I think there could also be a level where there's plaquing, and the microbiome are building up in the wrong form. So we might have, colonization of fungi or, and so I believe some of the dark and some of the white may be associated with that as well. And it's looking at what that really is. But it's a very interesting thing because our biome herald our hormones, they herald our cravings. And when they're out of whack, we crave all the wrong things and our hormones are all over the place. Whereas when they're in order, you don't crave. You don't crave anything. It's
Which
the
makes
most
sense.
amazing thing. Mm.
So I always look for takeaways for our listeners, and I'm curious, is there something that with just listening to you today, that is there something supportive that our listeners can do for their biome, their gut biome, to be able to make sure that they're at least taking a step in the right direction? Maybe it's something that they do or something that they don't do. You talked about an antibiotic creating problems with the biome, and I know that there's some other medicines that create those problems as well. So that would be an example of what to avoid if possible. But is there what would you recommend for that for people that
That's such
just
a
on a
great
preventative
question.
measure?
So preventatively, reducing stress, because our own stress can kill our microbiome. A lot of the GMOs have got glyphosate built in, weed killer, Roundup. And as a consequence, we're killing our microbiome, right? So that's really very, that's a huge part of the problem. Sauerkraut is the most amazing thing to help our biome repopulate correctly. Cacao nibs. And apple cider vinegar, raw unfiltered with mother, amazing. Using varieties of vegetables and herbs and things like this, and reducing or anything that's processed if you can will make the most enormous difference. Get rid of the corn. The corn is really bad. Corn and oats and flours, the grains, they've been doctored too much. They spin counter life. Our DNA spins in one direction and poisons spin in another. So when we start mixing our food with poison, we're going to start getting more of a disease.
Which makes sense. That makes total sense. So staying away from the GMOs because of the pesticides that they have built into them.
Mm.
I love what you said about the sauerkraut. Now, I'll say this. I'm not a fan of the sauerkraut. I have not been. As like probably a childhood thing. I don't know. But what I discovered was, and there's this brand that I found to be super good. It's called Bubbies, Bubbies. And you can find it all over the US, and I think all Sprouts and I think also Whole Foods carries them. But if you drain the liquid off, take the sauerkraut, chop it up, and then mix it with avocado.
Ooh.
You make it into a guacamole. So you make guacamole, but you mix the sauerkraut in with it. You have the good parts of the sauerkraut in the sense of the stuff that's great for your biome, and also if it's just, call it hiding it, whatever it takes for me. But that's for me a great way to consume it, and then it makes it into a dip. I'll put it in with food and make it just as almost like a side dish. And so, listeners, if anybody wants a good recipe, make sure you comment on the YouTube or on the Facebook or Instagram that you want the sauerkraut guacamole dip recipe. It's really good that way. But it's the only way I can do sauerkraut. There's some people are like, oh, I'll throw it on a.
But even one
hot dog,
teaspoon,
one
teaspoon
teaspoon.
on top of your food, and you won't notice it, but it started giving you all different vitamins and minerals and K2, which is a big rage these days, all sorts of goodies. But what I found is that what most people think is giving them probiotics, it's not showing up in their results. It's not showing me that they're getting any of those things. So the less processed, the more we can go and find things that are locally made or at a nice farmer's market or something like that, you will find that it'll have a much better result than the ones that we buy in our drugstores or in our pharmacies.
Makes sense. If you're open to it, I'd like to shift gears a little bit now. Let's make sure that we talk about Amy and the research that you were. I don't even know how we stumbled on this subject when we were talking last week, but it was what blew my mind the most about our conversation. It happened a lot during our conversation, but this was the capper. And again, anybody who's been around me for more than about 3.5 seconds know that we talk about executive state and survival state. Executive state, where our PFC, our prefrontal cortex, is electrically, it's turned on, it's active. We can have empathy for other people. We can be creative. We can problem solve, all of our executive functions, and hence the name executive state for when you're in a positive emotional state. When you're in a negative emotional state, you're in survival state. So the PFC electrically shuts off. The hindbrain kicks in, and we're making reactions instead of responding to something. And it's our fight, flight, or freeze. And there's a few other F's that get thrown out there, but we just stay with the basics of fight, flight, and freeze. And this Amy is the traffic cop who's deciding, okay, what direction are we sending information to the PFC? Are we sending it to the hindbrain? Deciding, are you an enemy? Do I need to be in survival state? And research shows that we spend about 70 to 80% of our life in survival state, which is not where we want to be. We don't want to be in negative emotional state. We want to be in a positive emotional state. And so as we were talking about these different things, you talked about some research that you've done in people who have suicidal ideation. And I'd like you to kind of take us down this trail of what your research has revealed, because it is not what I thought, and yet it makes perfect sense about what parts of the brain are working or not working.
What I found, I was called in by a family. It was late one Saturday evening, and they said, we don't know what to do. One of the family are suicidal, and it's desperate. It's really desperate. So I went over there and was trying to gain trust and regain some sense of harmony, and reset her neurochemistry, so that she could make some decisions from a place that was more comfortable. What I found was her reptilian brain, her hindbrain, that whole Amy system, was completely shut down. She was getting no blood supply to her survival centers at all. So her urge to survive and to live was just not even there. It was non-existent. And this was quite a wake-up call for me. And she just kept saying, I don't want to live, I don't want to live, I don't want to live. And I was saying, well, I'm not surprised. You can't want to live because that whole system's like just not there. It's just not doing anything for you. But what I found so interesting, I was going to be really trying to stimulate that part of the brain, and there was quite a bit of resistance. And I realized that she was also in a lot of distress. And so I moved my attention onto her heart, and found that her heart was in a lot of trouble. And as I worked electromagnetically to bring a harmony, a resonance of calm to her heart, so the center in her survival brain started to light up and say, okay, I can do this. I can now believe that life might improve. So it was like her whole faith, her whole belief system was locked down as her heart was in distress. And, it was almost like people say, I'm heartbroken, or I've given up heart. And I find that this really is what I'm seeing. And as I help that heart to feel more peace, more whole, more aligned with what it's supposed to be, so they start to feel alive again. So it was a very special realization.
Yeah, the concept of, because I had looked at suicide when we look at survival state as being fight, flight, or freeze. I looked at suicidal ideation as a flight response. I'm running from the pain. I'm fleeing from the pain. I want to get away from it. I can't take it anymore. Life is not worth living. The world will be better off without me. There's these myriad of thoughts that come up. And what you and I had discussed, and what you just explained right now, is the concept of suicide is anti-survival. We are built to survive. We're built to stay on this planet, to stay alive, to procreate and continue on. And when we turn against that, which many people in the Catholic faith, to sin, to commit suicide, because you're going against God's will. That whole religious aspect of it, of suicide, you're going against the survival instinct. And so when you talked about that part actually being shut off, it wraps right in with, there is no will to survive. It's actually
Yes.
the opposite of the will to survive. It's the will to not survive. And that is
Yes.
so against it's against Mother Nature. It's against everything that our bodies are built for, which is, I think, part of I think there's, if you were to dive into the different layers of what survivors of people who commit suicide, and I know I'm using the wrong terminology there, and so give me some grace, listeners, but the people who end their life, I think one of the reasons that survivors struggle with it so much is because it goes against everything that we're built for. So if you were to offer some ideas to a police officer talking somebody off the ledge, a medic or a firefighter who they're first on scene, the police haven't arrived, maybe a family member who's talking to someone who is contemplating or is they've revealed that they're going to commit suicide. You talked about affecting their heart. They might not have the tools and the skills that you have, but is there something that is there some first aid that someone can do in that regard?
Absolutely, absolutely. When I said to her, I can understand because you've got no blood supply to that part of your brain. She was shocked. And it was almost a state change for her, right? Because she was on this roll, like everybody's opposing me and I just don't want to live. And I just have to make them understand that I don't want to live. And instead of opposing her, I'm going like, yeah, well, I can see. And she's going, what? And I'm going, you've got no blood supply. Of course you're not going to want to live. You can't help it. And I mean, so there's the level where our thoughts produce the lack of blood supply, right? So it's like a cycle. What came first, the chicken or the egg? So you can reverse the thought, or we can reestablish blood supply. Because some people aren't in command at this stage. But when I told her it's not your fault, I can see. And this is why she was shocked, and then she became concerned for her own brain. Are you with me? So that was very interesting for me. Because it was almost like she now had understanding, she now had the reason, and she actually had compassion for herself.
Yeah.
So that was incredible. And then when I said to her, but actually, I'm more concerned about your heart. Can you see your heart? And she was like, what? Now she's not worried about trying to do herself in. Now she's worrying about her brain and her heart. And I did some work around that. But if people do a heart-brain coherence, if we've got a few minutes, I'll lead one. Would you like that?
I think that would be phenomenal. Yes, please.
Fabulous. So our brain has got an electromagnetic circuit, and we're able to read it, obviously, with EEG. And then our heart has got a much bigger electric circuit. We can actually pick it up 3 to 8 meters around ourselves, depending on how much of a vibrant state our heart is in. So if you were to place your hands on your heart, it helps you connect with that area, and you just drop your awareness often we have our awareness is somewhere around here as we're thinking. So drop your awareness as though we're going to unite those brain waves with our heart waves and amplify them. So we're going to bring our awareness into our heart, which is another brain, by the way. Our heart is a brain. And so just drop into your heart. I know that the scriptures say that when your heart and head agree, it will be done for you. And so this is a seat of creative power. When we get this coherence between our brain waves and our heart waves, something very magical happens. And our heart starts to give off a hope molecule, which is called anandamide, which is very, very powerful anti-inflammatory and a euphoric. So it's the bliss molecule. So if you were to just hold your hands on your heart, I found if I get people to rock either backwards and forwards like you're rocking a baby, or side to side, it sort of shunts the cerebral spinal fluid from either side of your brain and just gets you to just become more coherent in your brain. And now just close your eyes and breathe a little bit slower. If you're driving, maybe do this later. Just drop into your heart center, into that heart space. Don't think too much. Let your shoulders relax and bring your awareness into that heart area. And if you were to breathe as though your heart was doing the breathing from your lungs and taking the oxygen directly, it might also help you get this faster. As your heart waves and your brain waves start to become coherent and united, you'll find you might get a silly grin on your face. That silly grin is telling me that you've got some anandamide flowing, the bliss molecule. And if we were to hold this for at least 3 minutes, we'll be able to test the results with a cheek swab for up to 6 hours after. We will have reduced cortisol and adrenaline. We would have reduced a whole lot of aging markers. And of course, because it's a 6-hourly thing, if you were to do this 4 times a day, like taking an antibiotic or something, you will have taken a course of anti-inflammatories that is made just for you without any harmful side effects. This anandamide lights up the opiate receptors in our brain. Very powerful form of neurochemistry. If you hold it, you'll find you might even start feeling a little goofy, as though you're a little bit silly. And it's all good. Just keep your awareness with so much gratitude in this heart area. We find that gratitude, unconditional love, compassion are the things you need to make this anandamide flow. So if we can hold the gratitude for this amazing heart that just beats while you sleep, that is the most intuitive thing out, tells us things long before it's physically possible to know anything. This is the organ that gives an alarm if we say something that's not the truth. This is how we're able to measure it in court with a lie detector test, right? So this heart always tells us the truth. And even if someone else within our presence is saying something that's not the truth, somehow our heart knows. So learning to trust our intuition, learning to allow our heart to lead our brain. They've done a whole lot of amazing neuroscience tests with random generators on a computer popping up pictures of cute puppies or something that's not happy. And our heart knows before the computer has chosen. Before the image is on the screen, our heart already knows if it's in distress or if it's happy. This heart is miraculous and amazingly made. Take a nice deep breath and come back to the room. How was that?
That was amazing. What a great exercise.
Yeah.
What a great exercise.
3-minute meditation, and it gets your anandamide flowing so that you've got a whole lot of neurochemistry which will reduce pain. It'll balance out blood pressures. It will help you to feel, it'll open out arteries if you've got someone who is going into a heart attack, for example. These are the things that you can do to really transition and make sure that you've got a different outcome to the one that we usually watch happening. Talking someone
very
off
cool.
the ledge. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I can't think of a better way to bring this conversation to a close than that. And Jo, how can people stay in touch with you? What's the best way?
Thank you. I have a website that's nearly done, johawkins.com, and it is up now, just put up with a few little tweaks that we're still fiddling with. And then I'm most active on Facebook. and people can get hold of me. I'm also able to do different tests via people's biofield or with their consciousness on Zoom. So I'm able to test different things, do full body scans, and give them resonance from afar. I've worked on people's hearts while they're in ICU. I have worked on people who are off the coastline and fishing and they're in agony, and bring them to a place where they're not in pain anymore. So I'm able to do all of these different amazing things using human consciousness and the biofield, even at a distance. I have a practice here in South Africa on the ground, but my one online is huge as well. So I welcome anyone. And Facebook, I'm very active there. So you're welcome to just find Jo Hawkins on Facebook.
Wonderful. And what part of South Africa are you in?
I'm on the West Coast. It's the Garden Route. It's the most beautiful, beautiful part, just up from Cape Town. And we've got mountains and sea and forests, and it's just, rivers and lagoons and estuaries, and it's just magnificent.
Wow. Sounds wonderful. Sounds absolutely beautiful. Jo, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. We're honored to have you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And listeners, if you reach out to Jo, you want to follow her, JoHawkins, JoHawkins.com. By all means, check her out. Check her out on Facebook. Jo, I want to have you back because there's so many other things that we could dive into. And you're just a beautiful lady inside and out. And I'm really grateful to Gagan for introducing us, and I have no doubt that our listeners feel the same. So,
thank you, Kerry.
Any parting thoughts before we close up today?
Absolutely. I want people to really tap into their brilliant brains. Know that you have a brilliant brain. And if you want to, you can choose another outcome. You don't have to put up with the prognosis and the diagnosis that you've been given, that we can completely reverse autoimmune diabetes, osteoporosis, heart disease, all sorts of things. I reversed all my aging markers. I wasn't meaning to, but it happened as a side effect. If you can have a side effect, you might as well have a good one like that. But really, we are amazingly made, and we have only accessed 1/3 of our genetic code, which means there are 2/3 waiting in the wings to allow humanity to reach superhuman levels. And it's understanding that we're made for way more than we are accepting right now. And if we learn how to work with the quantum field, how to work with this amazing potential that we've been given, we will bring about another reality on this planet, and it will be truly magnificent.
That is so beautifully said. And you are truly magnificent. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Kerry.
Listeners, check us out at our website, theidea.world. Check out Jo at johawkins.com. And until next time, as always, stay safe. Bye for now. You found a lot of great value in this episode of the De-Escalation Conversations podcast. Please be sure to go out to our website, theidea.world, THEIDEA.world. On that website, just click on the link that resonates with you most. If you're a K-12 educator, if you're a firefighter, medical services, law enforcement, flight attendants, whatever industry you're in, we have specialized training for you. So check that training out, because literally it can save your life, it can save your relationship, it can save your career. So check out theidea.world. And I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. This is Kerry Mensior, and thanks for watching this episode of the De-Escalation Conversations podcast. I hope you got some great insights that you can use right away. But don't stop here. Click that video link above and keep the momentum going with another powerful episode. And hey, if you haven't already, please hit that like button and the subscribe bell so you never miss an episode. New strategies, new stories, and new ways to connect coming your way every week. See you in the next episode.